Have you ever had one of those days where you just lie in bed, pull the heavy blankets over yourself, and find your body physically shut down in the face of your basic adult responsibilities? We live in a hyper-competitive society that is intensely focused on the constant pursuit of success and wealth. Because of that relentless pressure, we are heavily conditioned to feel a profound internal guilt anytime we aren't actively working towards something productive. We often respond to these periods of stress by weaponizing that pressure against ourselves, applying the moral, unscientific label of laziness to our own struggles. That outward appearance of laziness often obscures complex, involuntary psychological realities, chronic burnout, high-functioning anxiety, or clinical depression. Identifying the source of your inaction serves as a diagnostic gateway, pointing towards the specific type of support required to actually move forward. To properly evaluate our mental state, we first need to establish a control group by looking at the characteristics of typical laziness. Standard laziness usually follows a clear, direct cause and effect relationship, typically surfacing after long periods of excessive work or chronic stress. It is also highly responsive to basic interventions. Making a clear to-do list, getting a night of deep sleep, or simply resting can restore momentum. If these simple actions successfully resolve the stillness, the inaction was a temporary, voluntary state of physical and mental exhaustion. In other cases, those same interventions backfire. A to-do list might actually trigger a shutdown, where the perceived weight of the tasks makes movement feel impossible. This illustrates analysis paralysis. It occurs when a single decision rapidly splinters into dozens of potential pathways, eventually entangling and halting all forward progression. An overwhelming fear of failure forces the brain into this gridlock. On the outside, it looks like a lack of drive, but internally, the mind is operating in a frantic, high-functioning state of anxiety. This is a state of intense, unmanaged psychological friction, where the mind effectively locks itself to prevent a perceived mistake. At the furthest end of the spectrum, inaction becomes entirely involuntary and often detaches from specific stressors. It arrives without a distinct trigger. A true depressive episode resists internal and external attempts to improve mood. No amount of sleep, self-care, or social interaction seems to alleviate the darkness or restore energy. This line graph maps positive emotional responses to external stimuli. In depression, the line flattens to zero, regardless of the input. The American Psychological Association identifies this markedly diminished interest in pleasure as a core hallmark of the condition. This represents a biological collapse in the brain's ability to process joy or reward, rendering the concept of motivation irrelevant. To reach a clinical diagnosis, professionals look for the 4 Ds of abnormality: deviance, distress, danger, and dysfunction. Here, this lack of energy becomes a severe dysfunction. It physically obstructs the ability to complete everyday tasks, creating a constant hurdle in life. Unlike procrastination, which usually has a logical reason, this dysfunction can strike suddenly and persist without an obvious external cause. Patients often carry immense feelings of shame and helplessness, precisely because they cannot simply choose to stop the condition. Clinical depression is a systemic breakdown requiring specialized medical intervention, placing it entirely outside the realm of a temporary mood or a funk. That morning spent motionless under the covers provides critical diagnostic data about your current psychological state. Understanding the mechanics behind that stillness changes the required response. A voluntary rut might respond to a change in routine, but a clinical illness requires the structure and support of long-term therapy. Viewing inaction through the lens of biology offers a way to challenge the internal voice that demands productivity at all costs. By recognizing the physical and psychological constraints of these conditions, we can begin to separate our self-worth from our output. Replacing self-criticism with psychological evidence allows for a more effective approach to healing. If your symptoms have reached the threshold of dysfunction, please reach out to a mental health care professional to begin the compassionate care you deserve.